This was very puzzling. So essentially, Doomer Media, kind of recent guest on the EFAP, and I will be honest, I concentrate more on the EFAPs based on the MCU, the DCU, and the Snyder Cut, things like that. So I know their video game content a little less. But Doomer apparently is also more into films than video games. But in this stream, which was mostly drunken idiocy, like most of the EFAP was drunk, they were just having fun, they were being silly, doing the usual trading cringe jokes, but for whatever reason, it started to get into conversations about video games and Tay-Lue and their pessimism, how much they hated the Halo adaptation. For whatever reason, Doomer just declared, yeah, I hate cutscenes in video games, and I hate video game narratives. And then everything started to turn downhill where they wanted him to refine his position, and it just ended in a lot of confusions on both sides.
Why were you sitting there silently while we were shitting on Craig Mazin for all of his reductive takes on video games? You were hiding this take.
It was me all along.
So when I say that I don't give a fuck about stories in video games, what you're concerned with is the exact data point of 0 games with good stories. You're not like.
No, didn't you just...
Fucking donkey. If there's one, then that means there can be more. If you...
Didn't you just say... I'm sorry, I need to find out. What did you say? Hold on.
If there's one, then that can be more.
I hate cutscenes, and I don't give a fuck about stories in video games. I just want to play the game.
Right.
Well, I'm not the biggest fan of the EFAP, but I actually found them somewhat more reasonable than Doomer. I understand what I think he was trying to say was, I'm just stating my preferences. Cutscenes are bad, and video game stories overall are mad. He did qualify himself later and say, no, I found a few of them as stories that I liked, but really, like 99% of the time, these stories are garbage. I concentrate on playing the game. I don't think these stories, frankly, go anywhere or mean anything. And some people on the EFAP just pushed back. What do you mean by that? Are we just dismissing the... Can you provide some examples, like to vindicate your position? But again, I think both sides were sort of trading on the ambiguity of what he said. Was he stating a personal preference, or was he making a judgment that no? Because again, he did refer to this, saying that I played games for 30 years. I played so many games. So it did seem like an expert judgment that he gave it a try. As an expert, he's declaring that video game narratives, frankly, have failed. So we can find one or two exceptional cases, but basically, the vast majority of times, they're garbage. And again, I'm more sympathetic to the EFAP because you can say that Super Mario and or Link or some of the early games didn't have much of a story, but they did have a story. It was very basic. I mean, Mario is defeating, quote, an enemy to save a princess, so on and so forth, right? Save a kingdom. It's a very fairy tale structure. It's not very complex, but it is a story. And the more and more they got into it, the more it seemed like they just were talking past one another in terms of what do they mean by video games, what do they mean by narratives, and what exactly his point is in even bringing this thing up.
Video game, I with a story I gave a shit about, and then I think you said except for maybe one.
Yeah, and I gave 2 examples.
And then that's
hold on. Stop. Are you trying to understand what my point is? Or are you trying to find some fucking quote that you can sit there and fucking stun lock on?
Well, it depends, right? Like,
okay, what's my point? My point is that I don't
Frankie's trying to stop you from retconning
the
conversation. There's a reason we're here.
I'm not retconning the conversation.
Yeah, it was. You gave the challenge of what is a game that has a good story that doesn't have any cutscenes. That was the challenge.
Even if I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm asserting that there are none. That isn't what I'm saying.
Yeah, but your response to the idea that there were many examples was I don't care, which is fucking worthless. Why'd you even give the challenge?
Okay, wait, hold on. No, we can walk through this.
You know what? I wasn't right about that. That's kind of it.
I spoke too hastily, of course.
Because like,
if I say that I don't care about a class of thing, can you show me something that I would give a fuck about? And you show me something that's like, okay, I don't give a fuck about that. How does that disprove anything that I said?
Well, but that's not what happened though. Like,
did I at any point say there's something wrong with? No, stop. Let me talk. Did I at any point say there's something wrong with storytelling in video games, or that you're wrong for liking storytelling in video games, or there's something wrong with cutscenes? Did I make any claim like this at all, or did I just say that I personally don't like it?
No, I'm with you.
Oh. Really?
I'm with you with about 40 asterisks.
So Doomer was getting a little sensitive that they were misquoting him or just trying to lock into a quote to make him look stupid. And they were sort of saying, well, no, the way you worded it, it did seem like a challenge. Like you're making this massive generalization. So video games just don't have very good narratives. He did technically concede one or two stories perhaps would refute his earlier position, but the basic position still holds. So something like Las Vegas, Fallout Vegas, okay, fine, maybe that's a good story, but that doesn't really challenge his primary position, which is like 99% of the time, video game narratives are just going to be really terrible. Now, I tried to do some research on Doomer Media, but it's a little hard because he keeps deleting his content. He keeps deleting his tweets. So getting a rounded idea of the guy is a little hard. From what I know, he is friendly with Mahler and Rags. He's appeared on Sitch and Adam, and they're very right-wing people. They keep attacking Vaush. Apparently, Doomer does not like Vaush either. And beyond that, he concentrates on film narratives and does analyses of that. And he does sort of contrarian interpretations. So I think from their perspective, they felt that this is him just being contrarian for no reason. Apparently, there are two things in the background. One is their disagreement with Synthetic Man and the fact that Synthetic Man went after the EFAP in the way they analyze video games. And Mahler took that very personally because he was being attacked personally. And they really just decimated what they thought was really a bunch of moronic things he said about Ragnarok. And I think they sort of just locked into Doomer as sort of trying to do a similar thing, that he's trying to say that their position on video games, or even them analyzing video game stories, is just pointless. It's stupid. And he was part of a discussion, which I didn't listen to, on Arcane. And they referenced that here, and they found him really wanting in that discussion. So it just seems that there's just a lot of unfinished business with Arcane and many other unresolved issues, and it just exploded in this discussion. And the Synthetic Man controversy is kind of in the background, where, again, I think they were actually right about Synthetic Man, but the way they did it is they did do a lot of dogpiling. They did that again here. And initially, honestly, I thought the EFAP was mostly in the right. I think the gap is a little bit smaller. I do think Doomer was just putting out these incredible statements, and he thought, like, okay, that's just my preferences, and they would move on, but they took it as a challenge, and then it became this very big, pointless discussion where nothing was really added to either side. It just seems that they assumed certain things. I don't think he technically said, but then Doomer assumed a lot of hostility on the part of Mahler and Fringy, which may be there, maybe it's not there. Again, at least the way they were trying to go about it, maybe they were being snarky or just trying to refute him, but I do think they asked some honest questions. So it just seemed to just go nowhere, just two sides just boiling mad over very minor points, and them kind of trading on the ambiguity of these terms. Because what is a video game narrative? How do we define gameplay? We have to go through examples carefully. And it just seems both sides were very stodgy. So it's just a very weird episode in the EFAP. It seems preemptively the EFAP fans are taking, of course, Mahler side and Fringy side, and the other guests, Metal, and that they were trying to be reasonable, and Doomer was just being obnoxious for no reason, and he was just using this to try to get more attention to himself. I don't know. I will listen to the discussion again. It just seemed a lot of confusion over nothing. But these questions are interesting of how cutscenes operate in video games, and whether video game narratives can or should be compared to other kind of narratives, whether in novels or films, or whether they're just much weaker on the whole due to just the way that games work. But again, I'm mostly friendly to the EFAP position here, but I think they could have handled things a lot better by just calming down and toning down the rhetoric.